Hey everybody, Justin White here, and you're about to listen to episode 4 of Power Forward. Our guest is Joe Lucido, Vice President of Closing and Client Experience. Joe has been a fast riser in the company, and he'll tell you what goes into making yourself the obvious choice for a promotion. Joe also explains what servant leadership means to him and how being in the weeds with your team helps build morale. Plus, Joe tells the story of the napkin that changed his life and what he does every single day that sets him up for success. It's all coming up right now on episode 4 of Power Forward. The primary purpose of this podcast series is to inform, entertain, and educate. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast series do not constitute legal or other professional advice, opinions, or endorsements of any kind.
This is Power Forward.
All right, welcome back to Power Forward. Justin White alongside Mateen Cleaves. As always, Mateen, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, I am living a dream, and please don't wake me up.
Well, I need you to be awake. I need you to be on your toes because today's guest is always on his toes. We've got Joe Lucido here. He is our Vice President of Closing and Client Experience. Joe, welcome to Power Forward.
Thank you for having me.
You are a fast riser at this company. Correct me if I'm wrong, 5 promotions in the 6 years that you have been here.
5?
5.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, 5 championship rings.
Oh, yeah.
1 for each finger. He's got 5 promotions.
Man.
When you hear that, Joe, what comes to mind for you?
For me, it's not promotions. It just feels like it's a different job and a different challenge. And I just try to focus on, hey, what is the new thing and what do we got to do and how do we get there? And, I don't worry so much about the promotions and the titles and all that stuff. For me, it's like I just want to do new stuff every day.
Okay, you don't worry about the titles or the promotions, but you got to tell me which one felt better. I mean, it's 5 of them. Was it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? Which one felt the best?
I got to be honest. Like as they've gone on, they get a little scarier each time. So probably the first one. Honestly,
Okay.
The first one. For me, I was probably 23 or 24. And for a kid who just out of college and first stepping into the corporate world, the first one felt like, hey, there's some validation. Like, hey, I can do this. You don't really know what your peers are going to be like when you first step into a corporate setting. And for me, seeing that, hey, I can do this, and I can compete with these people around me, and stand out in a lot of ways. For me, that one was probably the best validation.
And you, Joe, like a lot of people at the company, your path has not been linear. You've been involved with several different teams. So a lot of learning, a lot of training yourself to become an expert, depending on the team that you're on. What has that process been like for you over the years?
Yeah, I certainly have. It's evolved over the years. In the very beginning, I leaned on my leaders a lot. To give me guidance. Hey, where do I even start? Where do I find this stuff at? What's the first thing I should read? I got a lot of reading to do. I don't know what to read first. There's just so much information, and there's so much stuff that happens. And I think in any industry, specifically in our industry, it's such an incredibly intricate industry. And for me, in the very beginning, it was like there's such a huge wealth of knowledge out there. Where do I start to focus? So that was big for me early on. And then as time's gone on and as I've started to take on more specialized roles and take on new specific teams, that specificity has driven my focus, right? It's like, hey, I got the change of circumstance team. Like I have to go learn everything there is to know about change of circumstance, from where the rules come from, to how we implement them, what are our interpretations, like who are the other business units that affect what I do every day and what my team does every day. And so as time's gone on and it's very specific, it's honestly gotten a little bit easier, I think.
Okay, different teams, different challenges. Like in the sports world, if I go from one team in the NBA to the other team, I know I have to bring leadership and defense. That's what I was great at. So you've been on 5 different teams. What have you done on each one that you haven't changed? Like every team you've been on, you just haven't changed.
Yeah, for me, it always starts, and I try to do this every single time I take a new team, is first and foremost is people. You have to take care of the people. I tell people this all the time, like people don't care what you know unless they feel like you care about them. And so for me, making my team feel like they're part of my family and having them know that I would go to the end of this earth to make them successful, to make sure that they're happy, to help them get to wherever it is that they want to get to in their career or learn whatever it is that they want to learn, that stuff is always first and foremost. And then once you get people to buy into you and to believe in you, they naturally want to follow you. They naturally want to be a part of what it is that you're doing and who you are, and you kind of naturally become a leader in that way. If you go into a new setting and it's like, hey, you start to lay the ground rules, like, hey, this is how we're going to do this now. Everybody's like, this guy coming in, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So that's been big for me. It's always like, first and foremost, people have to feel like you care about them, you care about their families, they're part of your family. That's something I will never change.
And is that just, kind of ingrained in you? Is that just the type of person that you've always been, or is it just that you found that to be the most effective way to lead?
No, I think that's something that I probably have taken from my childhood. I come from a family, my grandparents immigrated to this country about 55 years ago from Sicily. And for me, it's such like a family culture. My family is extremely close. We all live within 5 square miles of each other. I'm talking grandparents on both sides, cousins, aunts, uncles, brother, sister, nieces, nephews, all of it.
Man, family dinners are big.
Oh, yeah.
But everybody there's just this sense of love at the center of all of that, and nobody's judgmental. Everybody in my family understands that you go through things in life. Everybody goes through their own stuff. Everybody has their own struggles, and knowing that they're there to have my back no matter what, but also knowing that they know that I'll never ask them. They know I'll never ask them for anything, but if I needed it, they would be there for me, and that sense of family has always been so important to me. And I really believe that that's central to all of the teams that I've been a part of, and most of what has made us successful.
And you speak about family, and that's something I encourage our leaders to do, is look at your team members as your brother, your sister, your best friend. So is that something that you do with your team members, like put them in that same light? Not just I work with you, but I look at you more as like a family member.
Yeah, absolutely. We had the unfortunate circumstance of having one of my team members, one of my leaders, pass away this past about a week and a half ago. And sitting in the funeral home just a few hours before we left for the cemetery, they had to, for the final prayer with his family, they were continuing to bring in more and more rows of chairs. And the rows of chairs were for people that we worked with. And even the night before at the viewing, they had time for people that worked with him to come up and speak about him. And I cannot tell you how many people in his family were like, oh my God, I never realized how much you guys took care of him and how much you guys were a family. And they took so much solace in the fact that his family lived in a different state, so he was kind of here on his own for a while, and they took solace in the fact that they knew that he had a good family here. And for me, they asked me to be a pallbearer. I got to be a part of that with their family. That's how close we are, and it's really like looking back at it retrospectively. I don't think I even realized how close of a family we are until watching that and watching the just overwhelming outpour of support for the family, and to take care of it. It's just that stuff is the stuff that makes. I've done a lot of stuff here. I've done a lot of process stuff and technology, and we've implemented a lot of things, and for me, that stuff is more rewarding, knowing that that's the culture that we have built on our team. That stuff is far more rewarding than any shiny object that we've been able to put out there.
Yeah, and those are the real life experiences, right? I mean, there's people's lives here that are impacted, and for you, being involved in a situation like that, a tragic situation where somebody on your team passes away. I mean, that could not have been easy for you to deal with, both in terms of for you, but also for the people that you work with.
It was a very tough week. It was a long month and a half kind of leading up to it, and it made a significant impact on the team, on the morale of the team, and for me, the funeral was so much. There was so much good that came out of it in terms of people really realizing how much of an impact we have on each other every day. Making sure that we spend as much time, no matter how stuff. Sometimes things happen at work. There's conflict, whatever. For me, going through that process, I think a lot of people saw and realized, hey, we care about each other a lot more than I think everybody realizes that we do. And so that I can't stress enough how much I feel like that has made such a positive impact on who we are, the team we are, and honestly the team we're going to be forever. I think people have so much respect for him and the things he did. He was really like the dad on our team, and then almost everybody said that. He was like a dad to me, and he was just always the guy. Funny story, he used to come to my desk every single morning at 9:45, and he would tell me all the stuff he was going to do that day. And I knew he was never going to do a third of it. But I never cared, because I knew that whatever he was spending the other 66% of his time that day doing, it was making an impact on people. And for me, that was far more important than whatever else that was going on that day.
Well, Joe, you talk about people and caring about the people on your team, and one thing I know that's been a big part of your success is knowing that your leaders trust you and have faith in you. What does that do for you? What has that done for you in getting you to the point where you're at right now?
Yeah, it scares me. No, I'm just kidding. No, for me, that's so much of what drives me every day. The thing that my leaders have always done a fantastic job of, and what is recognition. It's their repeated and constant recognition, and the trust is wonderful, and the faith that to go do it is wonderful. But I can go do it, and if I don't know if I'm doing a good job or I'm doing the right stuff or not, then you never really know. Am I going the right direction? Should I be changing different directions? And for me, they have always done a great job of when I do something wrong, or when something needs to be done differently, or when I don't have my eyes on the right thing, they're always immediately like, hey, what about this? Make sure you don't take your eyes off that. The other part of that is when the positive recognition is like, hey, you're doing a great job, you're on the right path. Like for me, that validation is what keeps me saying, like, hey, I know I can do this. I know I'm going in the right direction. I just got to keep pushing. I got to keep buttoning it up. Like that's been a big part of that too. And
you talk about validation, and there's a thing called building capital. Here we like to celebrate the small victories. You want to build that capital, right? So what is leadership capital, one, and why is it important to build leadership capital with your team members?
So leadership capital, to me, is making sure that people know that you have their best interest at heart. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to be direct with somebody and hold somebody accountable when they don't think that you're holding them accountable for their benefit.
Okay.
If I'm holding them accountable for my benefit, right, then they think, well, you don't understand what I do. You don't understand, my job every day. When people believe that you're holding them accountable for their benefit, when it's like, hey, I'm doing this so that you can grow in your career, so that you can be better, so that you can get that next promotion, so that you can get that next raise, so that you can get that next opportunity, or go get your dream job, right? I'm holding you accountable so you can be a better team member every day, and you can set yourself apart from everybody else around you. For me, leadership capital is all of the work that it takes to get somebody to believe and to know in their heart that what you're doing and what you're telling them, what you're holding them accountable to do, is for their own best interest and not for your best interest, or not for the best interest of the bottom line, or making sure we make an extra 7 cents of profit on every loan. You know what I mean? That's when people think like, this guy's he just wants me to do this because it's going to squeeze a little extra productivity out of me. It's like, no, I'm not trying to squeeze extra productivity out of you. I'm trying to get you to realize that you can break through that barrier. You can, maybe it's, hey, if you do this little bit of extra productivity, now you can start to bonus. And because you want a bonus, like you can go take your wife on an extra date every month, or buy a new car, or save a little bit of extra money so that your kid can get books when he goes to college. Like it's about getting them to understand that you're holding them accountable and trying to grow them personally so that they can go accomplish their dreams.
Gotcha.
Clearly you have your own leadership style, but I want to ask you about a couple of the great leaders that you've been able to learn from. Melinda Wilner, you mentioned, our Chief Operating Officer, and Andrea Hall, Senior Vice President of Operations. What are the biggest lessons that you have taken from working closely with both of them?
Yeah, they're two of the people in the building that I know work harder than me every day, and I keep trying to catch up. But they're both incredibly hard workers, and that's first and foremost. One of the things I've taken from them is the realization that there's no stopping. there is no end to when the work is done. It's never going to be, we're never going to come in one day and be like, listen, we made it. Now we can all put our feet up on our desks and hang out and just, reap the rewards. It is a grind every single day. And the better you are and the bigger you get, the harder it is to maintain all of it. And they have this relentlessness to make sure that we are doing everything we're supposed to do, everything right every day. Knowing that we'll never be perfect, but it's that relentless pursuit of perfection that for me has been so infectious. It's just never wavers. There's never a day off, and for me, getting to spend time around people like that has rubbed off on me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I know that you've said that this place has changed you, and we've heard that a lot. How do you describe how working here has changed you, not just in your work habits, but also just as a person?
Yeah, when I started here, I was recently out of college, and the economy was not in a great place. Wages were not in a great place. There wasn't a lot of opportunity out there. Most places that were hiring wanted experience because there was experienced people looking for jobs. And so when I first got out of college, I looked at the world like, hey, this thing is stacked against me. And, I finally got a job and it felt like that was stacked against me in the beginning because I had such a loser's mentality in the beginning. And this place has really made me realize partially through the opportunity that I've gotten and the success that I've had here has made me realize that it doesn't matter what time you're in, what era you live in, what generation you're a part of, when you start working, when you finish working, like 100% of your success and what happens to you is on you every day. And this place has really taught me that opportunity is endless as long as you're willing to work for it, and it doesn't matter what you think is stacked against you.
And when you came out of college, you had a certain way of thinking and you saw things a certain way. Do you have an eye for some of those younger team members that's coming in, and can you seek those members out that on the floor that come in that you can kind of think have that same mentality?
Absolutely. I would tell you about one person that I feel like is probably one of the bigger success stories that I've been able to be a part of, and it was a team member in closing when I took the team over probably 9 months ago. And very smart guy, very passionate, single dad, just wanted to work hard, and was really looking, hey, I got to make some more money. I got kids to take care of, and he had such an energy to him and so much knowledge, but his focus was on all of the wrong things. It was on how good of a closer he was, and he didn't make enough money for it. How much he helped the team every day, but nobody gave him recognition for it. Right? He had all the right stuff, but his focus was in the wrong place. And, through over the course of a couple months, he was probably the person I was hardest on, and it was every single day. His leader at one point told him, hey, you're kind of becoming my right-hand man. And I said, I want you to go be his left-hand man. Come back to me when he tells you you're his left-hand man too. But it's, I feel like I got to instill in him some of the stuff that was instilled in me by my leaders, which is like, hey, you're not there yet. Wherever you think you are and wherever you think you've made it, you'll never be there. And when you realize that and you just focus on getting better every day and helping the people around you get better every day, that's when success will come. And I will tell you, he is probably even my leader who knew him as that guy, the negative guy who the whole world was stacked against him, was like, this kid can't ever be a leader. And I told her, I said, I'm gonna work with him, and I'm gonna get him there.
It was a challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we promoted him to be a leader a few months ago, and I will tell you, he is one of the best leaders on the floor. And just a few weeks ago, she looked at me and she was like, you were right. She was like, you were right. He's been great. He communicates well. He genuinely cares about the people around him. He doesn't talk at all about money or title or any of that stuff anymore. He just focuses on how he can make his team better every day. And so it's interesting how you can see those things in people. And sometimes it's the people that seem like they're the furthest gone, like the people who seem like they're the most negative, are the ones that have all the good stuff in them. And it's just getting them to refocus.
And that's a perfect example for our leaders that's listening to the show, to not give up on people. Because if you give up on that guy, then we don't have that success story. So that's a perfect example.
Joe, I want to ask you about other people. You mentioned a couple of the leaders here that have impacted you. Who are the other people in your life who have really instilled the work habits, the strong work ethic, that desire to keep learning, to keep growing? Who would you point to as the other people in your life that have really made a large impact on you?
Yeah, certainly my parents, first and foremost. My dad, came here, son of an immigrant, didn't go to college, just worked his whole life, did all the stuff nobody else wanted to do. He was always in the automotive industry, and it's such a global industry. There's just a ton of travel. And so my dad traveled my whole life, doing what he had to do to make sure that we were successful and had a better life than he had when he was growing up. And him and my mom always stayed married. They're married to this day. But my mom, there were years that she, her and me and my sister stayed at home while my dad was living in different states or back and forth to different countries all the time. And that put a burden on her. It put a burden on me. And watching my dad go sacrifice all that time to go make sure that he could be successful so that we could have a better life. And then watching my mom sacrifice my dad, essentially, so that we could have a better life. And she was home with us every day, homework, showers, bedtime, brushing our teeth, like putting up with all of the, crazy stuff we put her through. And I think we gave her high blood pressure. But, it was watching them go through that just for the sake of my sister and I, so that we could have a better life. For me, like that's what drives me every day. It's certainly after having my son. I have a boy, he's almost 3. That changed me in a lot of ways. It put a lot of things in a different perspective for me. I didn't effectively become a leader here until my son was 1. And a lot of that I look back and think I changed my work habits when my son was born. And that has been the majority of my growth into leadership has been post my son being born. And I feel like just him being in a part of my life has changed the way that I work every day.
And having a child, it instantly becomes not about you anymore, but about them. And I think for leaders, I think they need to look at it in that way. When you're promoted to a leadership position, it's different because now it's not you just coming in worrying about your job. Now you have other people that you're leading that's following you.
Yeah, we talk a lot about servant leadership here, and certainly on my teams. Servant leadership is such a big part of who we are as an organization. It's the reason we have the family culture that we have. Your job as a leader is every bit as much to grow the people on your team as it is to, make sure that the job gets done every day. And I think that's a lot of the reason that I've been able to, that people have responded to me, is because they know that, hey, I'm just here to, I'm here to learn. I'm here to make you guys better. I'm here to make the team better. I'm not here to give orders. I'm not here to direct traffic. Like, I'm genuinely here. I just want to be a part of this team, and I want to help us get better every day. And being a servant leader and doing it for the good of the people on your team, it makes them work harder. It makes them they feel like they're part of something special. They feel like they're part of a team instead of, just a worker bee. And, when people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, it brings out this natural drive and this natural want for them to be part of something bigger. And, for me, I feel like I'm part of something bigger in this organization, but a lot of times it's even just team members. They want to be part of the best closing team or the best underwriting team. And, that's important to a lot of people. That's what drives a lot of people.
For those who aren't familiar with the mortgage process, you are the vice president of closing. And closing is what everybody remembers, right? From getting a mortgage, at least, besides getting the keys to their house. But it's high stakes, right? This is at the end of the process. There's a lot of pressure involved. How do you describe being around that atmosphere and how you try to set the tone for your team given what's at stake?
Yeah, I think this has kind of bled over into the way that I lead the rest of the way too. I have learned how fragile relationships are, how fragile businesses are. Being a part of the process that is so critical, and there is so much tension. It's when everybody's walking away with their paychecks. Realtors are walking away with their paychecks. Brokers are walking away with their paychecks. Borrowers are bringing checks to closing. People are walking away with keys to houses, and it's an incredible experience. It's a crazy hour. For anybody who's ever been part of the mortgage experience, when you close on a house, it's an interesting hour, and it's very stressful. It's very stressful, and you realize how fragile relationships are, how fragile success is when you're a part of something that we have a technology issue for an hour, and we have hundreds, if not thousands, of families that process is being interrupted for, and now they have to, they got a U-Haul with, a goldfish in a bag in it. Their daughter's goldfish is in a bag in the front seat of the U-Haul. Like you learn.
Don't forget about Goldie.
Yeah, you learn all kinds of fun stuff about people when you delay their life for an hour, the biggest part of their life for an hour, and so it's just so fragile, and it's part of the reason we have to prepare so much. It's part of the reason we're so diligent about the technology things that we do, about the processes that we have, because all of those little interruptions can make serious impact on our business every day.
Yeah, and you talk about, I think experience is priceless, and you have a ton of experience. So when things do go haywire, thinking when you first came in to now, is it a different way that you handle when things get a little out of hand?
Yeah, absolutely. Early on when I was a part of this organization and first started to deal with things at a larger scale that are going wrong, IT issues, whatever it might be, my first reaction was always like, oh my God, how did this happen? And I realize now, certainly after being a part of closing, that it doesn't really matter how it happened right this second. How do we stop the bleeding first? Yep. And then how do we go back and rectify whatever issues we caused, making sure that we're communicating incredibly well and incredibly quickly. It's always first things first. How do we get the message out there that we know there's an issue, and how long is it going to take to resolve? Making sure that we stop whatever impact we're having on the business and on further clients, remediating the issue soon. And then after everything's said and done, then let's go back and look at how did this happen and how do we prevent it going forward. And so often, especially early on in people's careers, I think or early on in roles for people, they think, oh my God, how did this happen? It's like, that's the last thing you got to worry about. First, let's figure out how to just get it to stop happening.
Solution focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're 28 years old, right?
Yes.
And you are responsible for 400 people. I'm sure it's a great honor, but a lot of responsibility attached to that. Do you allow yourself to ever think about that? I mean, how do you kind of deal with that, knowing that you've got your job to do, your responsibilities, but you've also got 400 people that you got to take care of?
Yeah, not only do I think about it, it's probably the majority of what I think about. That is what drives that's what drives me to make sure our technology is right, to make sure our processes are right. Because at the end of the day, the environment that we have, that people come into work every day, makes such a huge impact on in one of those individuals' lives, their families, right? People go home and they sit around the dinner table and they talk about work. They talk about what how their leader made them feel that day. They talk about the opportunity they did or didn't get. That's what they talk about. And for me, knowing that the things I do every single day have an impact on, especially the 400 families that I work with every day. For me, that's always forefront in my mind. That's the stuff that keeps me up at night. When I first took on one of my teams recently, there was some morale issues. There were some people who they didn't like what they were doing. They didn't like the team they were part of. And that was the first thing that I tried to tackle, and specifically for that reason, because, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that rely on me every day to make sure that their family lives continue to get better, that they feel like they have hope in this place. They have hope for better days ahead. They have hope that they're going to be able to buy their kid a car in a year and a half when they turn 16. That they're going to be able to partially pay for their college, to pay for a new set of hockey pads, or pay for whatever it is, that opportunity that we give to people every day. That's probably always forefront of my mind.
And let me ask you this, because 400 people, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, 400 people, how do you kind of keep your hand, how do you get in the weeds with 400 people? How do you keep in touch with 400 people?
I can tell you how. He's never at his desk. Because honestly, whenever I have gone to find Joe, I will peek around the corner and look at his desk. He's never there.
Right.
It takes time. I walk around on my teams a lot. I talk to people. I ask them how what are they doing this weekend? On Mondays, I ask them how their weekend went. And that always seems to bleed into, whether it's a conversation about their family or honestly sometimes a conversation about work. They're like, hey, well, I got you. Let me ask you this question. Those escalations, those little, interactions with people at their desks, things that they're struggling with, that keeps me in the weeds of what they're doing every day, what they're struggling with. And that is, I can't tell you how much I've learned about my teams just from doing that. I spend an hour every day. It takes me about an hour every day, but I spend an hour every day walking around, checking on my leaders, checking on team members as much as I can, and just, hey, how's your day going? What's going on? And, you always find that one guy or that one girl that's frustrated. They're having a rough day, and it's like, what's going on? Well, I got this technology issue. I keep trying to generate this thing, and I get an error message. That's how you learn the things that are happening on your team and the things that your team members go through every day. And the further removed you get from the team members that are doing the work every day, the harder it is to stay in tune with what they're struggling with. And just being the team members feeling like they can be heard and they have some impact, and their feedback to you, when it gets implemented, they're like, hey, they listen to me, they care about me. And then that opens the floodgates. That opens the floodgates for feedback. Hey, I got this other thing today, right? It's like now all of a sudden everybody wants to tell you all the things that are wrong because you went and you took something that they were struggling with and you made it better. And you start to just get so much more feedback after that.
So you mean to tell me you just don't sit back in the office and just kick your feet up and just let your division run itself?
No, it's I have to be more in the weeds and on the floor now to make sure the team is running effectively than I ever have been before. And we don't have, a lot of our leaders don't have offices. We sit on the floor with our teams, and I love it that way. I want people to always feel like they can come up to me and talk to me. There is so much stuff that's happened in our business, and so many things that I've been able to make better just by sitting on the floor and either having somebody come talk to me or just overhearing a conversation, overhearing a phone call. It's like, hey, did you just tell that guy that something wasn't working right? It's like, what was that? Let's take a look at it. Let's sit down. Let's get with our IT team. Can we fix this? Can we make sure it doesn't happen again? There's been so many times where that stuff has happened, and it's because I'm on the floor with my team every day, and they know that they can come talk to me at any point in time. And just having that open line of communication and that open atmosphere for people to just feel like they can walk in, that open door policy, that stuff it's instrumental in our teams getting better.
You're a true success story here, and people, they look at a successful person, they want to know, well, how can I do that? When people approach you, whether it's people on your team or people from other parts of the company, and they ask you how you've gotten to where you are so quickly, what do you like to tell them?
I feel like a couple things. One, I've been fortunate that there's been some awesome opportunities that have come up. But bigger than that, it's taking opportunity. It's even in the lack of opportunity, even in the absence of opportunity, there are ways that you can differentiate yourself from the people around you. And what I tell people all the time is, don't worry about what the next opportunity is. Don't worry about what the next role that you think you want is. Just come in every day and do everything that you can to differentiate yourself from the people around you. If you stand out, opportunity will come. Opportunity will find you. But it's about standing out every day. It's about working harder than everybody around you every day. It's about having a yes mentality and being willing to do the things that nobody else wants to do. Those are the things I feel like that have driven my career, not just because of, this opportunity came up and, they just picked me and then I did a good job with it. So it's like, oh, well, for me, it's about putting in the work, outworking whatever role that you're in today, and opportunity comes after that.
And you have opportunities that pop up, and some people don't want to take them because they get comfortable. You have, especially in the business world, some people get a position, they just want to sit back, relax, and they get comfortable. It seems like you're a chance taker. You just go out there and you dive into it. Where did that come from?
Honestly, a lot of that I got from here too. I was pretty risk averse, I would say, for most of my life. I was always like, hey, I'm in a good spot. I'm doing my thing. I'm okay. For me, I don't know if I want to go do that thing. Like, I don't know. For me, being part of this place and somewhat feeling like the first time I had the opportunity to get a promotion and to take on a different role, I had a little hesitation with it. And what I learned from that and going forward, it changed my life in so many ways. And then I realized, like, hey, I can figure this out. I know if I work hard enough and I spend enough time and I put my mind to something, I learned from that first role that I can figure anything out. And now it's just a matter of, it's almost when I take on new stuff now, it's like, oh man, I know how much work this is going to be. So the hesitation, I think, now comes from like, do I really want to spend another 20 hours a week doing this thing? But no, I have lost all of my fear of doing new things, and now it's just a realization that, hey, this is going to take a lot of work, and but for me it's like whatever the organization needs, and I've gotten so much good stuff out of this place. I've been so fortunate to be a part of this place, and so fortunate to be a beneficiary of a lot of opportunity, and coupled with hard work, that I feel like it's my responsibility to make sure that I do what I can, as long as knowing that I have the ability to make sure that we continue to grow and I continue to make as good of an impact as I can on as many teams as possible.
I want to read you something. This is actually a quote from you. It's something that you put together for an industry award that you won recently, and I just loved it when I read it. And Mateen, you haven't heard it yet, so I want you to react to it, but I want to read it and then we'll talk about it. This is a key to your success. Know where you want to go and be relentless about getting there. Early in my career, I had the relentless part down. I knew I was willing to outwork everyone, but oftentimes my effort was scattered and pulling me in different directions. It wasn't until I learned to have a clear vision of what I wanted for myself and my teams that I started to become successful. In work and in life, there will always be distractions that come up and sidetrack you from what's critical to achieving your goals. The trick for me has been to cut through the noise and focus on the things that define where I want to go and who I want to be.
Oh, that's heavy.
He wrote that.
Joe, that is heavy. You gotta talk to us about that. That's heavy, man.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, especially early on at this place, and like I said, my first opportunity, I got to work with Melinda, and in BIG, which is our rotational program.
Yeah, the Business Innovation Group.
Yeah, and there was so much different stuff to learn, and for me, I was like, I'm gonna go do this thing and do it really well, but I was all over the place, right? And it wasn't until I started to realize, like, hey, what is it that's important to me? What are the things that I think we need to get better at? Like, what are the real things that are impacting us and our ability to grow? And for me, early on, it was like, hey, training and underwriting. We were growing incredibly fast, and I was the biggest part of what I did after BIG, and while I was working with Melinda, was worked on underwriting things, and we were growing so fast, we needed to train underwriters, and we had this huge groups of people that we were bringing in and teaching them a new skill that is not an easy skill to learn. And so for me, underwriting training was so critical to our growth and us being able to scale that I just focused on that, and I spent months really, really digging into the training world and understanding how to deliver content and writing content and how easy it is for a message to get skewed, right? And so I focused almost solely on training for a long time. And how can I, what are some tools? Can we build some quick Excel spreadsheets? Like, what are some things that we can give these people to make their lives easier and to make this transition easier? And I brought so much more to that one thing that I had focused on than when I was just doing little odds and ends projects all over the place. And it was then for me that I realized that it's like, hey, if I put my mind to one thing and say, hey, what's the most important thing that I need to go focus on, the end result comes out so much better. And so that's what I do every day now. It's like, hey, I come in when I leave for the day, I know in my mind, like, what's the most important thing I got to tackle tomorrow? And I think about it when I drive home. I think about it when I eat dinner. I think about it when I when I work at night. I think about it when when I go to bed. I think about it when I wake up. I think about it when I'm getting ready. I think about it when I drive in. And I already know in my mind the very first thing I do when I walk in these doors, what it's going to be, how I'm going to do it, who do I need to communicate with, and I do that thing first. And then I move on to the next most important thing. And for me, my days are just a series of jumping from the most important thing to the most important thing.
That's a great point. And I think, people have to stay locked in. Like you said, we can get distracted and we can have these big ideas and want to do so many different other things. But when you stay locked in and stay focused, it makes your life so much easier. And let me tell you something about Matt Ishby, our CEO. He brought me on board for leadership. And, I got here doing a great job, loving it. I'm helping out with the leadership. So, I started feeling good about myself. And I went to Matt and say, what else? What else can I do, Matt? I want to help with something else.
Dangerous question.
Yeah. And he said, I just want you to focus on leadership right now. There's so much room for opportunity here, and we'll dive into that. But right now, just stay locked in on leadership because you're helping the company a lot this with that. And kudos to having a great CEO who has the vision. He said, hold on now. It's like in the NBA, you got that young rookie that just want to be great, and he want to do it. No, just relax. You're doing great. We're going to keep you in that lane. Stay focused, and then you'll eventually build out.
Well, clearly you work really hard. You're always thinking about work, but I know that everyone's got to have an outlet. For you, I know you brought up hockey pads earlier, and you're a hockey player, right?
Always have been. Since I was very, very young. I probably started playing when I was 4 years old. I played through middle school, high school, in some rec leagues in college. Still play to this day, and to me, it's a fantastic sport.
What does that do for you when you're out there on the ice? Is it an outlet? Is it a way for you to get away from work?
Absolutely. It's one of the few things that I do where my mind completely comes off of everything else other than that. Back to focus, right? For me, it's like I can focus on just that one thing. For me, my work email's on my phone. Like if my phone's on me, there's always this connection to work. And when I'm playing hockey, there's no connection to work. And so it's just me and 10, 12 other guys and just having a good time, focused on something else. And it's such a great workout. It's such a fast game. That's what I always loved about it. It's just so fast paced. And and just team building and building a relationship with the guys, and that stuff is so much of that stuff translates to work. It's such a big part of our culture, sports, in our business, obviously because of our CEO, and but that's how we run our business. A lot of it applies to business, but yeah, for me, it's such a great way to disconnect for a little bit, for a couple hours a week, and just have fun.
And you talked about certain things that translate to work from sports background right here, ding, ding, ding. So I learned, and I was thinking even taking this job, if I can implement that same work ethic and drive that I had playing basketball that made me successful doing that, then maybe if I bring that same work ethic and attitude to the business world, then I'll be successful. Is that something that you brought in? Absolutely.
Being successful in sports is incredibly difficult. There are so many people that are playing the same game, and there are so few spots at the top, at the highest levels. And for me, people who are athletes, there's just a different work ethic. There's a different sense of competition. There's a sense of being great every day, right? If you're an athlete, and you can be really great for a lot of years, right? You can be the best athlete in high school, the best athlete in college. You get drafted high. If you don't start performing at the next level, like, it doesn't take long for you to not have a job anymore.
Right.
And years of work and years of pain and blood and sweat and tears, all that stuff can go out the window so quickly. And for me, that translates so much into business. It's like you talked before about complacency and making sure, there's a lot of people that they get a role and then they start to get comfortable. Like, hey, I'm doing my thing every day. It doesn't take much for somebody else to start to nip at your heels and say, hey, maybe this guy's a little hungrier, this guy's working a little bit harder. So for me, that's what translates so well between sports and business, is the people who are athletes who understand that you have to work every day to make sure that you stay great every day and always be willing to outwork the people around you. Like, that translates so much into the corporate world.
One thing that we didn't ask you about, and I've heard this story before, but I want you to tell it, is how you ended up here, because it was almost like fate intervened, right, to get you to join the company?
Yeah, so I graduated from school, and when I was in school, I was working in restaurants, and I was bartending one day, and one of who is now an underwriting leader, he had just graduated and moved over from a different mortgage lender and started an underwriting class, and I met his parents while I was bartending. It was like a Sunday afternoon. There was some horse racing on. It was probably 4 o'clock. Nobody else in the whole restaurant, and we just got to sit there talking about, whatever, life, college, work, and they knew that I had mentioned, like, hey, I'm kind of trying to get into banking, and they were like, oh my God, my son just got a job underwriting at this mortgage company, and I know that they're hiring. And they wrote the name of the company down on a beverage napkin, and at the time we were like, we were tiny compared to what we are now. And so I went on a website when I got home, and like when there was like the apply here, it was literally just opened an email. It was like, send your it was like just you send your resume in. It wasn't like there was
Pretty
jobs posted or anything like that. I didn't really know what I was applying for, so I attached a resume and a cover letter, and I was like, hey, I just told the story, like, hey, I just met another underwriter. They just started. I met their parents. They told me to send my resume because they knew you guys were hiring. And it's funny, I started in the building, I went through underwriting class, and I ended up sitting right next to the guy. And we still have a pretty good relationship to this day. But, and he's an underwriting leader now. And but yeah, it's crazy how what I look back at, there's such tiny moments in my life that have made such a huge impact on me and how the rest of my life has played out. And so for me, it's like I tell people this all the time. People that are always itching, like, I want to go do this thing. Like, I don't know, I want to go take this new job on. I want to go whatever it might be. I tell people all the time, like, just let it happen. Yeah. Life has a funny way of showing opportunity at interesting times. And that's why I talk so much about just focusing on being successful every day. That opportunity will come up at some point. You never know when it's going to happen. It might come out of the blue, but it's just being ready for it. And it's certainly changed my life, that one shift of bartending.
That's crazy. And I tell people all the time, totally agree. Don't worry about things you can't handle. What you can handle is working hard and being ready for an opportunity. And my thing is, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. That's not luck, man. You were ready and the opportunity came about. Now let me ask you this, because you talked about sending in your resume. They didn't really have I don't know what the interview process was back then, but now you've had a chance to interview people, right? So what is it that you look for when you're interviewing people for a job?
I don't focus too much on resumes. For me, resumes are just, and even college and stuff like that. For me, a lot of that stuff is just showing, like, hey, I have the capacity to learn. And I think you can show capacity to learn in a lot of ways. I predicate so much of my decisions on the interview themselves and trying to get a feel for the person that I'm bringing on. Like, what are the things that they think are important? What are the things in their life that are, have made an impact on them? What is it that they want in their life? What are their goals? What are their dreams? Who I just try to get a feel for the person. Are they somebody who's very open? Are they somebody who seems like they're eager to learn? Right? For me, that eagerness, that passion, almost like a fast pace to the way people talk. Like, I love people that talk fast. Because for me, somebody who talks fast, it's like, hey, this guy's moving. Like, he's ready to go. And so I look for that eagerness to learn, that eagerness to just be willing to do, whatever it is. When people start to ask me, like, well, what does the job entail and what do I have to do every day? To me, that's them almost, there's some hesitation there, right? It's like, for me, when I interview people like that, it's they're looking to see, like, hey, am I gonna like this thing or not? And for me, it's like the people who are like, I'll do whatever. I just want to work here. I love, like, my brother works here and he says it's an awesome place and I just want to be a part of it. Like, that eagerness and that willingness, that's the kind of stuff that I look for more than anything.
So I hope the people are listening. If you ever get interviewed by Joe, just talk fast.
And show that you're eager, right?
Exactly.
Well, clearly it's a mentality that's helped you get to where you are, and we know that success is a lifelong journey and that you're going to keep striving to achieve more and more. And it's been great getting to know more about you, and thanks for sharing your story.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
And thank you for listening. To make sure you never miss an episode of Power Forward, subscribe wherever you find your podcasts and leave us a review. And look for another new episode coming your way 2 weeks from now, featuring more inspirational stories of success. I'm Justin White. We'll see you next time on Power Forward.